Morning, everyone. Um, I know I keep saying I'm trying to read these late at night, and then it's always morning when I read, but that's just how my brain operates. Daylight is nighttime for me, bedtime for me. Um, I'm also using my camera's speaker, so hopefully you can hear and understand me. I'm going to read just about a chapter today because it is late or early, depending on where you are, and I'm a little bit tired. So here you go. Like I've said before, this is not the professional audio version. This is just something I wanted to do while so many people are having to be cooped up inside or quarantined or social distancing, self isolating, whatever your situation is. Um, I know, like, in I guess, like 50s and 60s, they would have radio shows where the family would like gather around to listen to stories being told. And even today, there are podcasts that I listen to where people tell stories. So I figured, why not read my book? So that's what we're here for. I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm going to read chapter 12, part 1 of Lullaby of the Lilitu. Please enjoy. In June, the time came again for Cayenne to visit the village. After months of begging him, he promised to take me back this time. I had visited Catherine twice since January, but was eager to go with Cayenne once more. As I waited for him to come downstairs, I lay on a thick bearskin rug in the library, hidden behind the shelves of the den as I read Dumas' The Wolf Leader. Heeled shoes clicked across the stone floor as Yuri came and flopped down beside me. He was clean and handsome in his fitted sweater and tight corduroy pants. He smiled at me, raising his eyebrows and slapping his hand onto the page of my book. "My little Rose, aren't you excited?" He rolled onto his back, throwing his free hand across his forehead. "And I will miss your debut in the real world?" I giggled. What am I supposed to be so excited for? "Oh, right, I was coming to tell you." He blinked and stood, pulling me up with him. He placed his hands on my shoulders. "You're going out tonight." Smiling and biting his bottom lip, he rocked back and forth on his heels and stared at me with an expectant look. After a long silence, I said, "I know." He rolled his eyes. "No, darling girl, you're going out with Tabitha to London." "London?" I squealed and jumped into his arms, wrapping mine around his slim shoulders. Going to London meant Cayenne had decided I was ready to hunt real prey. Managing my hunger became easier every day, and I was eager to see the world outside of our secluded home. Livesey never changed, but the outside world grew and evolved in magnificent ways. Laughter bubbled up through my body as Yuri placed me on the floor. I took 2 steps towards the door before something else he said hit me. "What do you mean you'll miss it?" His eyes widened. He laughed, taking my left arm and walking me to the den. The last time I visited Tibet, I met an old priest who told me all about his ancient temple. This ancient temple, hidden deep within the Gandhi Shan mountains. He called this morning, and he's found a guide willing to take the two of us up. I must leave at once. Yuri pouted, hugging me close. "I can't wait to hear about your first hunt, little Rose." Tabitha glided into the room with Anna trailing behind her. "Yuri, you ruined the surprise," she chided. Her lips curled up into a gentle smile as she gave his shoulder a light shove. "I had to. We fly out in an hour. I couldn't wait." He kissed my hand and grabbed Tabitha's to do the same. "I know you'll keep an eye on our little Rose safe. I know you'll keep our little Rose safe while I'm away, but please call me if anything should happen." "Of course. May you fare well in your travels, my brother." She placed a light kiss on his forehead and hugged him. He kissed my hand again, and a grin lighting his face, and sped out of the room. Tabitha looked me up and down. "I've chosen something lovely for you to wear tonight. Go on and get changed." She grabbed my right arm and pulled me towards the foyer. I'm thinking we'll twist your hair before we go out. It should only take an hour. I shook my head. Can't we go now? I'll just get changed and put my hair in puffs. Before she could respond, I pulled away and sped to my room. Anna arrived minutes later to zip me into a short, tight black dress and silver sequined flats. She held a palette of powders and creams and, with fingers as deft as Tabitha's, painted my eyelids and lips. She polished my nails with a dark maroon lacquer. Wow, I breathed as I looked at and took in my reflection. Look who's part of the 21st century. Samson stood in the doorway, leaning against it with his arms crossed and a beer in one hand. You clean up nice, girl. I'm going to be in the city tonight, too. You see me? You give me a holler. Name out there is Rob Hunter. He tipped his hat to me and moved down the hall towards his own room. The sound of his boots echoed off the wall, sending shivers across my skin. I shook my shoulders. What a creep. Tabitha called me from downstairs, and Anna held open a shiny red trench behind me. I slipped my arms into its silk-lined sleeves. Goosebumps covered my arms and legs. The jacket flared out around my hips, adding movement to every step. Cayenne's love of fine fabrics played a part in everything we wore. Fine by me. Tabitha waited by the front door with her hands on her hips. A tremor of excitement ran up my spine. She glowed in sparkling gems. If I didn't know she was only a few decades younger than Yuri, I'd swear she was no older than 17 in her white, Grecian-styled mini dress. Close, she answered. I was 18 when I turned. Can anyone here let me ask questions out loud? I pushed the door open behind her and led us towards the stables. It's rude to just peek in coup de tete. Forgive me. Old habits, you know. She laughed and took my arm in hers. You'll learn to control it, and then you'll see how easy it is to forget you're doing it at all. We climbed inside of the carriage and headed into the forest after a few meters. Into the forest. After a few meters through wild wood, we came upon a narrow road, and the coachman drove the horses into a gallop. 15 minutes later, we emerged onto a small beach where a rowboat awaited us on the shore. The coachman helped us out of the carriage before slapping the rear of one of the horses. Retour! The animal led the others back into the forest to make their way home as the coachman stepped into the boat. Tabitha and I followed suit and sat as he rowed us across the river Weaver. Electric lights twinkled in the windows of the small town in front of us, as though bits of the sun had been placed in every home. Wow, I breathed. The coachman whistled as we neared the shore, then helped us out of the boat before jogging towards a sleek, dark green car. Yeah, the Aston RXR, too. I do love your style, my goddess. He whistled again as he sat in the driver's seat. Two large men in suits stood beside the Aston, and another black sedan idled behind it. The guard held open the door for us, and we slid into the tan leather seats. We pulled out of the lot with the two guards following in the black car. Two small bags with long straps waited on the seat, one silver with golden clasps and trimming, and the other a deep red velvet with black closures. Tabitha grabbed the silver bag and passed me the red one, opening it to show me the contents. Things I'd read about since I awakened. A mobile phone, an access card registered to Miriam Sylvain, with a picture of me that Cayenne took months earlier, and paper money. Do you remember how to use a cell? I tapped my finger on the small black screen, and a robotic voice greeted me as it came to life. Hello, Miss Sylvain. How may I assist you? Tabitha grinned at me. A century ago, these were nothing more than fantastical witchcraft. I swiped through the phone, marveling at the bright screen. Keep that with you whenever you leave Livesey, in case you're too far away for one of us to find you by other means, she explained, tapping the side of her head. Unlock it with your fingerprint. Your access card can be used for purchases, to get you into certain places, and is proof of your established identity. Your account has no limit, but do try to be responsible. She showed me where to find the pre-programmed numbers that would allow me to reach anyone in our family. There were a few other listings: drivers LNG, Commissioner Clement, Headmistress Taylor, and more titles of people in high positions. "They're from Livesey," Tabitha explained. "All of our high-placed servants are born on the island and raised to be the best at their jobs. You'd be amazed what humans can do when they have someone to worship and please." I'll keep going. Chapter 13. After a few hours, our cars stopped in front of a tall, crowded building. Katya's flashed in bright, multicolored lettering above the entrance. People lined up down the block, some in small clumps, nearly all staring at phones on their hands and chatting without looking at their friends. The people of London smelled, dressed, and somehow looked different from the villagers at home. A new species. As we made our way to the front of the line, their fragrances assaulted me from all directions. Lights everywhere stung my eyes, and loud, pulsating music poured from the building. Tabitha handed me a pair of sunglasses. They dulled the light, but the music beat against my eardrums with a feverish ferocity. Tabitha ushered me inside, the guards forming a barrier between us and the sea of moving bodies. Excuse me. Tabitha ushered me inside, the guards forming a barrier between us and the sea of moving bodies. People danced in a wild trance, their bodies rubbing against one another, their eyes closed in ecstasy. The odors of sweat and liquor mingled with perfumes and hormones, and I was once again intoxicated. Hunger gnawed in my stomach as I watched the writhing humans. I inhaled. Another scent, older and sweeter than that of the frenzied bodies, wafted into my nose. A fragrance that will always stop me in my tracks. Mia entered from a door marked "Emergency" and sauntered through the crowd, an angel amongst beasts with the air of a duchess. She scanned the room, peering into the mob with the skill of a master huntress, looking for her next prey though the scent of blood lingered fresh on her lips. Her eyes settled on me and narrowed. My heart beat twice and stopped long enough to ache. I laid a hand on my chest as she walked towards us. Her red leather skirt clung to her swaying hips, highlighting every step. Dancers cleared a space for her, tripping over themselves as they watched her pass. No one noticed the young man stumbling from the door behind her with one hand clamped to his neck. His eyes glossed over, and a smile flirted at his lips as he sat by the bar, sallow and weak. "Why did you bring her here?" She addressed Tabitha, but she looked into my eyes. Her voice passed clear over the din, unfettered by the surrounding noise. "Couldn't you have taken her to hunt with Sanson?" She smirked when I balked at the idea. Tabitha smiled and placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's an easy starting place for our young sister, Mia. What safer hunting ground is there than your club?" The other woman cussed in Russian and crossed her arms under the deep-cut neck of her blouse. She scoffed and glared at me. "You are not my sister." Tabitha's voice lowered so that I had to strain to hear her. "Haven't we lost enough?" Mia shot Tabitha a vicious look before taking my hand in a tight grip and dragging me into the crowd. "I'll help you, but don't kill in my place." Tabitha and the guards disappeared from view as we made our way through the dancers. Mia turned and slid behind me, her hands on my hips, swaying them from side to side. "Dance," she whispered, her breath warm on my ear. The back of my neck tingled at the sensation. "Close your eyes and feel the sound. Let it penetrate your flesh and move your body." She danced close behind me, her body pressed against mine as she wrapped her arms around my waist. I sank into her, somehow safe in the arms of someone I wasn't even sure liked me. Something about her thrilled me. Her cherry-scented hair fell over my shoulders as we moved, and she buried her face in my neck. The sharp points of her teeth grazed my skin, and her lips fluttered on my pulse, sending shivers down my spine and goosebumps up my arms. We swayed faster and faster until she released me, leaving me swept up in the music. I danced, stretching my arms towards the ceiling, cold from Mia's absence but ready to find my own prey. Through the pulsing and undulation, a boy with sandy hair argued with a girl a few meters away. Their voices broke through my rapturous dancing, forcing me to look in their direction. He chased after her as she pushed her way past me. He grabbed her arm, and the flesh reddened under his fingers. She whimpered and pulled back. He raised his hand to strike her, but I grabbed it. He paused long enough for the girl to break away and disappear into the crowd. Then he jerked around to face me. I gazed into his eyes. Heat burned in my abdomen, rising and spreading through my body. I willed the warmth into the boy, pulling his energy into me, and the anger melted from his face. He smiled, a crooked, dreamy smile. I caressed his face and pulled him into the dance. He stumbled on drunken, clumsy legs as I led him to a clearing on the dance floor. His eyes pleaded, begging me to command him. I placed his hands on my waist and swayed in a slow, halting dance. He stepped towards me, closing the space between us, and I wrapped my arms around his neck. His face, ruddy and marked with the signs puberty had left behind, came at me with the clear intention of a kiss. Instead, I turned my head and pulled him into a tight embrace. I needed to seduce this repulsive boy, to take him somewhere to feed the hunger gnawing in me. Look into his eyes. A voice echoed through my head, reverberating in the depths of my mind. It sounded like my own voice, but it did not come from within. I followed its guidance and peered into the boy's eyes. Instead of the mud-brown eyes that looked at me with all the randiness of a virgin cunny-haunt in a brothel, I now looked into two bright stars. Kiss him. I pulled the boy close, tasting the lingering flavors of alcohol and tobacco on his lips. The world quieted around us as I realized I'd never been so close to any other human, certainly not like this. The organ beneath his chest danced in wild excitement, keeping pace with the music and punctuating our every movement. When my hunger peaked, I pulled him through a door marked employees. We entered a dark storage room. A tickle on the back of my neck alerted me to Tabitha. She lurked in the dark room, waiting to assist me if needed. My drunken prey caressed my shoulders, my waist, my hips. He kissed the curve of my neck, tracing the lines of my collarbone, hungry for more than my lips. I quieted my own breathing and listened to the liquid pumping just beneath his skin. My hunger matched his in ferocity. I bowed my head to the meeting of his neck and shoulder and kissed the vein there. In my ravenous vision, it pulsed and glowed bright red. A loud moan wrenched its way from his lips as I deepened my kiss, sinking my teeth into the hot flesh. The burning nectar coated my tongue. The boy struggled for a moment before giving in to pleasure. His arousal pressed against me as I drank. Ecstasy swept over me, melting into my bones. Boar's blood proved a pale comparison. Disjointed images flashed before my eyes, colors and confusion. In an instant, I knew all that this boy had ever known. I tasted the meager egg and coffee he'd had for breakfast, the cigarette after an intimate shower with his girlfriend the night before. Through his blood, I shivered with the nerves of when she first came into his life. Then sorrow from the heartbreak of older, long-broken relationships. I vibrated with a teenager's anger, drug-fueled rage, and thoughts of violence towards anyone who dared speak to me. Joy spread through my bones as I opened a box to find a Ninja Turtle playset. His blood pumped into my mouth, filling me with a lifetime of memories. The images jumped from one to another, the rapid countdown of an unremarkable life, cycling over and over. A new image materialized. Cinnamon brown hands caressed my face as a woman sang a soft lullaby. She wrapped her arms tight around me until a noise startled her. A man screamed and something crashed. The woman burst into action and lifted me into her arms. She hugged me to her chest and kissed my face as she guided my arms into a blue, puffy coat. I trembled as she opened a window covered in tiny painted handprints. She told me to run as she lifted me through tears shining in her golden eyes under the light of a full moon. The images faded into blackness as the boy's hands ceased their exploration, and he dropped hard to the floor, dead. Okay, that will be it for tonight. I started losing my voice for some reason. I think it's just because I didn't get any water before I started reading. So that was it for tonight. We made it to chapter 14. I'll see you guys in a couple of days, maybe tomorrow night or tonight, Sunday night, or in a couple of days, just kind of when I feel up to it. I'm not trying to pressure myself into doing it every day because then it'll feel like work. But I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for being here. Have a lovely morning, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. And please remember always that I love you. Bye.